Okay, we are live for the Sunday office hour streams. Hello, morphemes, phonemes, and graphemes, and welcome back. Malice, you're a pre-stream gang with only one person. But thank you for welcoming back. My throat is doing better. I'm gonna see if I can actually bring this pop chat out. There you guys are. Just gonna bring that over here where I can see it a bit better by just glancing up. Hello, Nex. How are you today? Midstream gang. Is it really midstream gang if, let me see, can I position this in such a way that I can see the window below it? And yeah, okay. And put on my music. I'm hoping I don't have... Okay, you guys cannot hear my music. Good. So, hello. Yes, my cold is doing much better. That would be impressive if you cut my internet cables. I'm doing much better. I just... Not... Yeah, last weekend. Not this weekend that just happened yesterday and the day before, but last weekend, I got, like, post-nasal drip in my throat. And that somehow ended up becoming a huge cold slash flu or whatnot. And God, my throat killed me. But yes, I am doing much. Cutting my internet cables is not a challenge next. But yeah, Monday was the worst of it. I tried streaming Tuesday with Kate. We streamed for like 2 hours on the second channel, but it was kind of a lackluster stream as I was just dying throughout all of it. And I got worse Thursday. And then, yes, Friday I found out my microphone broke. As in, my microphone would work with Discord and if I had one other window open. So it could be Discord or Minecraft, or Discord and Safari. But if a third window was open, it would just stop working. And it only worked like half the time. I'd have to unplug and replug it back in like 30 times. But then the worst part is that it just doesn't work with OBS. Which is really annoying. So yeah, I ordered a new microphone, bye-bye my paycheck, on Saturday. And today, I'm in Boston, borrowing my mom's setup. Using a really nice microphone. Much nicer than what I was using. Because I bought a $60 mic on sale for like $30. But yeah. Either way, let us get into the stream. So, starting off with lingual today, because I've already done the Wordle and the connections, because I completely forgot I was planning on streaming today. The first lingual seems very easy. Yep. And then on to the Lango. What? So it's... Okay, I don't... It's not Polish, but it's... I think it's in that area. Yeah, it's... Not, is it Czech? No, I don't think it's Czech. Let's see if that's slightly closer to that. It is Czech. What are you laughing at next? Scots? No. Yeah, no. Gaulish isn't a thing. It was slightly closer. You are right in that. Is it, what is SA Asia again? Yeah, definitely not SA Asia. It's a type of English. I think that it's Irish, people. It's Irish. Nigerian pigeon. Yeah. I knew it was a variant of English or a different variety of English. I just didn't know which, because God, fuck, there's so many of them. Not gonna lie, I just glancing at this at first, I thought it was just a text with a bunch of diacritics. You know the curse text people will type out with like God damn it. Like that. Just like a bunch of diacritics. Yeah. Quasi nieting baitala Karelinas. Kind. Okay. It uses this syllable, which is either something used in the Sami Finnic languages up north, I'm pretty sure, or in uh many African languages. Random capital letter in the middle of words? What? Quasi. You mean this? Uh, it's not wolf, but I just want to see if it's in Africa. It's so more. Okay. I must. Ah, Adric. Yes, hello. I will explain that in a second once I'm done with this slangle. Well, I'm guessing this language, and then I will answer that question. Oh God, no, it's not. It's definitely not Swahili. I know that for sure. But I'm just trying to see what region it is in. Malagasy? Okay, not Malagasy. Definitely not Ngosa. Okay, that's so it's by map of Africa. Okay, so Swahili is just kind of spoken along the coast here, if I remember correctly. And Ngosa is down here. Malagasy is over here. So it's gonna be somewhere up. Wolf is all the way over here, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So looking at somewhere here. Oh no, I don't really know languages in that area. I really do not know the languages in that area at all. Okay, so Ajugbe is where's Ajugbe? Language, Aja language. Okay, so that's Togo and Kong. So that's this area. So yeah, it has to be Central African. Hmm. Rundi. Probably not it. Probably failed. Fur! Boots with the fur. Shawty got the whole town looking straight at her. Fur language. Is that a Khoisan language? Nilo-Saharan. Yeah. Okay. Fur, Darfur. It has. Oh, fascinating. I love it when languages have debates, but yeah, it uses mm, yep. Okay. Fascinating. Yeah, Adric the oh, Khoisan. Yeah, it's a many languages aside from the Khoisan group uses the or that character because it was entered into the IPA because it was a modified character by the Sami people, and that was like right when the colonization of Africa really started going off, and so they used a lot of IPA like characters in the orthographies. So many languages in Africa use the character, not just Khoisan, which is now a highly debated and probably not actually real group of languages, or not an actual grouping, because they were grouped due to the fact that they had cliques, but then Zulu has cliques, but that's Bantu, so the family just kind of fell apart. Fur is spoken by the fur of Darfur, my favorite. Yeah, that is a good sentence. I will give you that. Let me adjust these. So, Ardrix, you wanted to know my opinion on Shinji Tai. And I think this is the third time I'm giving my little rant on the channel. But I have no problem with simplification. I I love the languages. I love Chinese characters. I love how they work. I love studying their history. But I also believe that it is up to Hello Kitten. It is up to the people who use the system to choose what they do with it. And so while I'm disappointed Koreans have basically. That is fair. I have been planning on making a video. But yeah, no, it's Although it disappoints me, Koreans dropping Hanja and Vietnamese dropping Chunom disappoints me greatly. At the same time, I am like, it is their language, and even if it is for nationalistic reasons, the drop, it is still their choice as a group to uh, change the writing. That said, I have a problem with how both simplified Chinese characters and Japanese Shinji Tai have simplified stuff. Which. Wait. Is that? Let me. Wiktionary? Yeah. I had trouble seeing it, but it's. Yeah, this is actually a great point to start with my problems with simplified Chinese. See. Oh, God. I'm surprised there's someone else who knows about Z tools. It's a very useful website for seeing variants and whatnot. But yeah, it's this character is a perfect starting point for my problems with simplified Chinese in that it is the yoification. I think I've seen it called before. Oh, that's nice. It's the yoification of characters where this character, the inside becomes just two simple lines. If we look at Tushu Guan, I think it also simplified. Nope, that's just in Japanese. Han is actually this part, this entire section is replaced with that simple yo. Yeah, so it's let me just get to so it's yoification is how I've seen it referred to at times, where many components are just replaced with this character. And we see it with Han in Yihong. Nope. God, what is? There we go. We can see it in this character here, with this complex radical. This complex component is just simplified to those two strokes. It feels oversimplified, if you will. And I feel like it loses some of the history. Remember, this is all personal opinion, but it feels like it loses some of its personal history and whatnot. I like the way Japanese does this character, where it does a more cursive variant like this, which when Chinese simplification does. Oh, it has a term in Vietnamese. That's fascinating. Yeah, but Japanese does like a more cursive variant or another variant, which I like it when Chinese does that. So like the word for, you just made it up on the spot. Got it. For country, kuni, guo, and so on. This is a historical variant that has been in use, and while I like this one better aesthetically, I don't mind this variant. It doesn't. It's a nice little variant. And that is my main complaint with simplified Chinese. What I do like about simplified Chinese is that it is retroactive, as in the simplifications apply to any character you use, basically. And so what I mean by that is if a character rises in popularity that has the as this radical, it will be simplified to the simplified variant, as opposed to Japanese Shinjitai. It's a coin flip. The only characters that were simplified are those on the Toyo, now Joyo kanji list. So it's only this it's only all of these characters that got a simplified variant to use in writing, which would have been fine, except then they added a bunch of characters that weren't simplified. So like the character for basket officially uses the not the Kyujitai form of dragon, and it's non-standard to use the actual Shinjitai form following the Shinjitai simplification scheme. And that is what annoys me about Shinjitai. Where's my mouse? There we go. If that makes sense. So it's really just two gripes with one gripe with each thing, and it's both very different gripes. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like extend this simplification to all characters you use, even if they're added to the list retroactively. And it's like they do use the Shinjitai form in media, like in many of the examples I was giving in my video. You'll notice that you won't notice in the video, but the example I got actually used the Shinjitai form for the Kojiki sentence. Because it's partly a variant you'd see in certain versions of the Kojiki. But it's like, why not just extend it? And so that is my opinion on Shinjitai. It is a bold attempt, but a complete and utter flat landing on its face that just made more problems than it actually fixed. Especially with the rise of computers and more kanji are actually being used nowadays that weren't beforehand, because it's easier to look them up on the computer and type them out than it is to handwrite them. Another example of this I love is Tsugi, the character for Tsugi, which has two things here, but then in many components, in most components, it will just have the two lines. But where's the... There are some characters that have a third line. I can't remember what they are at the moment, though. Yeah, I can't remember what they are at the moment. Oh, yeah, no. I actually have heard about that. This guy on my Vietnamese video wanted to commission me to make a font for it. And I was like, okay, I'd be willing to. This is the going standard rate for this, apparently, according to my friends who do this for a living. And I have not heard from them since. So that's fun. Okay, now it is time to do. I hope that answers your question. And now for something different, because I have a D&D campaign tonight, and I haven't actually made my character yet. uh, my homebrew creations. I need to homebrew. Create a species. Create species. Cut? What is... Oh, Qualcomm Tantu. Yeah, no, fair enough. I think I'm gonna use humans. No, I'll just create from scratch. Welcome to Homebrew Content Creation. Getting started by entering basic information about your homebrew species. After saving, you'll be able to add more information. Display all relevant summary. I am basing this off of let me pull up. There's this race I was gonna use. Another homebrew race I was gonna use as a basis. Yeah, except I never had a problem with she and Tsu, surprisingly, despite my dyslexia. So I'm basing it off of the spider kin, because those are the closest I have found to the Anadi from Pathfinder. Which, okay, pull that up. Upon creation, your species will be visible to you privately. If you decide you can share your homebrew species. Species will be viewed and created. If some of your species will split. Okay. So I am going to use languages. Nope, that's languages learning. Callings. Fifth epoch. Gonjak. Konjak. This is not the right. JSOL. There we go. There's my JSOP conlang. So I want it to be a... The name of the race is going to be a lone from what they call themselves. Which also means I'm going to need to make a word for spider. Hagel. Or I could just use Hagel. 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 Version. This is the first version of Hagel. They are size, about the same size and build as human. Your size is medium. I think I'm gonna make them Medium or small? Speed walking. 30 feet. Speed burrowing. I think I will make that. I think I'll leave that blank. Speed climbing, same as my walking. Speed swimming. Usually that's half of D&D average burrowing speed. Okay, I can add that later. I think swimming is usually half, though. Oh, God. Oh, God. Which one do I do? D&D species group. Aasimar, Dragonborn, Dwarf, Goliath, Gnome, Elf, Halfling, Human, Orc. Are those some of the options? Yes, they are. Tiefling. I might have to go Tiefling. Aarakocra, Ergonasi. Definitely not. Not a centaur. Not that type of spider creature. Changeling, Deep Known, Draugr. Okay. Ah, I could have done a Herongon. That would have been fun. Just trying to figure out which group a spider lake being would be in. Um, I'm not seeing anything that jumps out to me. I think I'm gonna have to make it a variant of Tiefling in order for it to make sense. Yeah, let's make it a Tiefling. Um, it tends to human in appearance. I know this isn't linguistically related, but I need to get this done because I completely forgot to do it yesterday because of real life events. But human in appearance, skin color ranges from black to red to blue, depending on the tribe. With various markings of white throughout. Along the no. Often tattooed with white ink to showcase tribal affiliation, achievements, position in society, and age. Two large eyes similar to humans, often in a gem-like color, often matching the color of their hair. I don't know why I spelled that in a British way. Three gemstone like eyes situated to the situated to the side and above of the main eye. These aren't actually eyes, but these aren't fully functional eyes, but do grant night vision. Basically, what it is they have their regular eyes, which function much like a human's, just with color and whatnot, but then they have three on either side gem-like things that are very photoreceptive to varying light levels. They can't see color, but they can pick up very, very small amounts of light. They're basically rods. Human in appearance, skin color ranges from black to red to blue, depending on the tribe. Often tattooed with bright white ink to showcase tribal affiliation, achievements, position in society, and age. Two large eye symbols of humans, often in a gem-like color. These gemstone-like eyes situated to the right and above. Three gemstone-like eyes. Okay. And then two horn-like structures protrude from just in front of the ears through by the cheekbone and wrap around to the front of the mouth. So yeah, they have horns that go from here, kind of jut outward slightly, and then come in around and end here. Or here's about, generally. It changes depending on the person, but yeah, and they kind of reminiscent of somewhat reminiscent of spider or wasp mandibles. And then finally, 4 spider legs jut out from the back okay, let's see what Hero Forge. Let's see where exactly Hero Forge placed them. Heroes. So it kind of does it around the shoulder blades. That is a very finicky zoom. But yeah, it's kind of around the shoulder blades. This is my first time homebrewing, by the way. I've never homebrewed before. 4 spider legs strut out from the shoulder blades. Also, feel free to ask questions or just talk about stuff, especially if it's linguistics, because that way at least I have an excuse to say that I did actually do linguistic stuff during my office hours stream. 4 spider legs jut out from the shoulder blades. From the position of the shoulder blades to go above and to go under the arms. These are highly flexible. With the ability to these are highly flexible and end in sharpened points that can be used for attacking or for climbing walls. Yeah. Wait, then what's this? Oh. Humanoid spider species that is adept at climbing and creating silken goods, often renowned for their beautiful singing. Are you planning to walking at the ink? Not for the rest of the stream, just getting it started. Oh. It's very boring, I know. Part of the problem, though, is I actually do not know what to do for the rest of the stream once I'm done. I might Konglang some, or I might do Japanese, but I literally just graduated college on Sunday. And so I'm just getting that very lethargic. Everything seems like a chore. I'm able to relax feeling. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, can I do mandibles? Nope. It's sad they don't give mandible off. Oh, wait. That's not exactly what I was thinking of, but it works, I guess. But yeah. They can what now? What's Mog? What do I add there? That means nothing to me. Let me ask the oh the thing that you do with your chin, isn't it? Doing the homebrew species trait, a homebrew on in the beyond what is species trait introduction. What is a language you know about that has the most free word order? That is a really good one. Before I ask that, I'm going to look up mewing. Yep, nope, I know mewing. It is such bullshit. Yep. It is also popular in incel and looks maxing? What? I I don't understand. Beyond species trait introduction. Just trying to. Now, what is a language I know about with the most free word order? That is. I think the language I know about, like I know it exists with the most free word order, is definitely Latin, as I've seen some examples of where the adjective is detached from the noun it is modifying by other words in poetic situations, which is weird but also understandable, I guess, because of it's just how free the word order is. But languages I know, personally know, study to look with free word order would be I think Japanese personally that I languages that I speak that have free word order or languages I'm learning or try to learn. So yeah, out of all languages I know of that have free word order, Latin has the most free that I know of, and that I of languages I'm learning or speak to a small extent, it is Japanese. I think Japanese has slightly more free order than uh whatchamacallit, German. If you like your rice to follow the same standard. Okay, that's not telling me what the racial traits is. And it's a mandatory. Because it is very. You speak Czech, right? You know, it is. It's very weird to me because it's just so detached. Because all the language that I spoke, it's like you have to have the thing heading by the thing modifying. Wait, but there's no button. That is fair. Yeah, no, that is very fair. I'm just gonna put climbing for now. Then I need to choose a 1000 by 1000 pixel image. Where did my Hero Forge go? There we go. I think I can get a free image from this. Yes, okay, there we go. Choose file. Please be large enough. Okay. Hey, I've added my first ever homebrew. I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. Okay. So that's all done. Save changes. Dismiss. Add a species trait. That looks very confusing. Isn't there meant to be like a little drop down that lets me... Okay, your dexterity increases by 2 and your wisdom by 1. Ability score increase. So do I want it to be... wisdom by 1? Yeah, next give us an example. Come on. I want to see. I want to see. Okay, I have no idea about any of that. My homebrew collection. Hejo. Okay, let me just delete all these. Okay, create a character. Homebrew. No. Why isn't... Why isn't it showing? Okay, let me think about the name. Still nothing. Yeah, this is all we see. Okay, I think I'm gonna want to add a diminutive. Name diminutive. And then we have the head at everything. Adjectives go after the nouns they modify. Adverbs to that. So for the name, there's going to be a Yeah, suffix. 지어힌. So, I will make the word 힝. Yeah, there we go. Named diminutive. So her character's name will be Cheu, Cheohing. Cheohing. And I am a bard. Yes, add class. Okay. Okay, so I'll move the gloss. The crowd. Let's see. So I see the sentence without the gloss, and the gloss with periods placed with dashes. What the hell? I don't know why. Okay, level 3. Expertise. Nope. One sec. I am getting a call. Let me just mute myself real quick. That was my little sister who came in to give me a hug and to say hi after getting home from school. Okay, so it says choose a skill expertise. Oh, choose an instrument. What's a yarting? Ah. The bagpipes of invisibility. Oh god, okay. What's a glower? So I think I'm gonna choose a drum because it doesn't seem like I can bird pipes. Basically, Dark Cloud Dulik means into far lands and... Huh. That is fascinating. There we go. I like that. D&D musical instruments list. I just want to see examples of what they are. I think I'll do Wargong. Baldur Czech was such a cool language, and most of the features aren't really commonly used. Revivalist Czech? That sounds... fascinating. Huh. That is really fascinating. And the fact that it still exists in a small extent today, according to that. Acrobatics. Performance and athletics. Then expertise, acrobatics, and performance. Bard subclass. What is College of Lore? I might have to make my own subclass. Oh, that's not too bad. Okay. Yeah, College of Lore. Stealth. History. And insight. Okay. Then I can come back and change all of this later. I have 6 cantrips available and some prepared spells I can do. I'll come back to that later. I just want to save this for now. I guess soldier background. Perception, tool proficiencies. Okay, I just want to get to a point where I can save Right, okay. Okay. Basically, I'm trying to restart Czech as a main language of Czechs to replace German instead of looking at how people in villages still spoke language. They use 16th. That is so fascinating to me. That is part of the reason why I study linguistics. That is the historical developments and the ideologies in place. I did not mean to do YouTube. In place that lead to these changes and the state a language is now in both spoken and written form is fascinating to me. Okay. I suppose I did more than enough non-linguistic related stuff. I have to get that all done by 9 tonight, so I have time. But let us do... Johnny wife pulled a knife upon the keeper of the inn, said I'll count to 5 until him put the money in the bin. Johnny wife put a knife... I might work on my consolidation of all my grammar and vocab stuff of Japanese. Or is that... one sec. There's... I'm doing stuff on my other screen real quick because it's super secret. As in, I'm just opening my Steam and I don't like people seeing my Steam. It is interesting that they pulled it off, and it's actually kind of reminds me of the Hebrew revivalism to an extent, as well as modern standard Arabic. Much more modern standard Arabic than Hebrew revivalism. But it's still because everybody that... okay, maybe less so Hebrew, but definitely modern standard Arabic. Uh, okay, never mind. That's 20 bucks. 20 bucks I do not have. I was thinking that maybe for the rest of the stream we could start doing Pentiment. Because I've heard good things about it, but... and it's linguistic related. But I will leave that for later, when I actually have money. Actually, God. Yeah, no, I still have that lethargy of I'm done with school. All I have now is looking for jobs. So every time I try to think of what to do, I just come up blank. Start overlaying. Oh yeah, that was that project. Only when urbanization hit. Goddamn urbanization coming in and messing everything up, as always. Um... Okay, yeah. I will do this. That's not what I want the size to be. That's the size I want it to be. Let me do that for this window as well. There we go, and then that way I can just quickly zip, zap, zoop. Oneself, zibung. Why is it? Oh, because I had Wooby input method on. So what this is a little project of mine of consolidating my various grammar notes and vocab notes into a document or two that I can then release for people to use in their own studies. It's daimeishi. Rediscover. Saihaken. How often is sai used? Pretty often. It seems like it's a fairly common. Oh. Prefix. Yeah. Yeah, quite often. Okay, then it's probably good to have a different entry for it. So it's re re again. Probably gonna have to have a language note in the file or word note in the file. Sai prefixes generally are ambivalent to pitch accent. What are you ambivalent to pitch accent? Saihaken. No, you force kunin. Wait, why does it drop there? Usually it just does the beginning, but that's a Saikido. Yeah, seems like it forces a drop on the first. Whatchamacallit? First Mora. Seto. Setsuji. Do I have them as the same? Yes. Nihongo, setsuji, settoji, hakken is to discover. Discovery, finding. I need to put the pitch accent there. And then that pitch accent is flat, and that is a meishi. Nihongo, meishi, suru. Rediscovery. Rediscovery. Yeah. Hakken. And then because these are suru verbs, grab these, paste. Okay, why? There we go. Suru. And suru. Oh, those are part meaning. To discover, to find, to rediscover. And then I drag these all up to their locations. Suji, fukushi. There you go. I have, yes, Setoji before Setsubiji. These guys are dragged up a wee bit too far. Okay, pseudo nouns go there, and pronouns go there. And I think I'll actually continue that later. Again, I just feel so lethargic about everything. It is insane. Who's messaging me? Mac. Let's open up Erinog. Maybe I'll have a thought while I do Erinog. Conlangs. Fifth Epoch Erinog. I'm a big fan of that font. Okay. So I think we actually got, last time we did this, we got mostly everything over aside from some verbial stuff. So lexical forms, nouns, and then the articles. And there are three genders: lunar, solar, stellar. Lunar and solar nouns can be either singular, dual, or plural. Stellar nouns, on the other hand, can be collective or singulative. Definite article is used for non-objects. English names are usually led by the definite article outside of certain instances. So erinog is terinog. The definite article is also used with distal adverbs ngir, soch, songir, and ur being placed after the noun. Take off ngir. Here, yeah. But by me, between us, by you, by neither of us. If the noun is indefinite, then a filler particle based on the first vowel of the noun is placed beforehand. High vowels are led by E, mid vowels A, and low vowels by A. This happens regardless of grammatical gender. So tsegaf, agaf, tsefer, efer, tsifold, efold, tsengui, ingui, tasur, itsur, tebuch, ibuch. Adjectives end with u, which becomes u when following a labiovelar consonant. Baru, ardu, mahu, singu. When modifying a definite noun, all adjectives agree in gender, number with the noun they modify. They inflect by dropping the final u and replacing it with the final vowel. So tasur mahwa le tsavaran. And replacing it with the final vowel from the definite plus mutation. Okay. So tsegaf mahwe le tsetachen. The good large red apples. If the noun is indefinite, then one adjective is placed before the noun. Use of adjectives in the predicate requires different forms found in syntax. Pronominals. Ek, tu, es, uva, iva, deva, u, och, de, ure, che, im, si, uvan, ivan, devan, be, ge, den, in, zin, uve, ive, deve, I, uk, ir, uf, if, ef, ever, eger, eder. Oof, if, f. I just realized how ridiculous that looks. Dual pronouns are rare in the spoken language, being more common in literary works than anywhere else, though some localities use them as a plate form of the singular and plural pronouns. Stellar nouns as collectives are replaced with the third-person plural pronoun. When made singulative, they take the solar third-person singular pronoun. Prepositional pronouns are suffixes that attach to prepositions. They are modified by the first-person singular preposition is ye when following a noun, and e when following a consonant. Should I make... That was... Jesus Christ, that was a voice crack. Should I... I'm really wondering how this would look using Arabic. I think I've done that before, though. I can't remember. Verbs. A, I, O, E, ad, id, or, ed, achan, ichen, ochan, adan, even, ozan, even. Dual form of the plural capital and the modal verbs are archaic, with most dual nouns taking singular agreement. Dual forms of the verbs are acquired in literature. Erinog has two participle form prefixes split between active and passive participles. Both participles are used to modify nouns, and in relative clause constructions, both conjugations take the ul and prefix gi for the active. Drop the ul and ra for the passive. The final u then flex to agree with the noun like any other adjective. Tasur Giprena. Giprena. Tasur Giprena. The free man freed himself. Yada yada yada. Orthography. I don't think I need to do anything there. Phonology. Yeah, that all seems fine. Definite article merges with prepositions. Poetry. Epics are generally written with using the rules of threes, 3 sets of 3 mark. Oh, I didn't showcase this yet, did I? What I'm thinking of here. I'm thinking of having poetry for this language. Like classical Latin, classical Greek style epics. Epics are generally written using the rules of 3 sets of 3 more called tracks, with the first, fourth, and 7th more carrying the stress. Verses are led by a repeating line that changes slightly with each iteration. The second and third line start with the same consonant, but the 7th stress more on the leading line. What the fuck was I thinking there? I have no idea. I don't do poetry. I think it kind of shows. Nominal sentences. Here we go. So, sentences led by a copula. The subject is in the prepositional. Not the subject. The predicate is in the prepositional case. Mahua tasur. The man is big. The pattern only applies. Adjectives have their own inflection. Yeah, okay. I opened this because I got an idea of something to do, but then I completely forgot what the fuck I was gonna do. I had walked through the open door problem. And I got an idea, and I go to do it, and I completely forgot it. Which is not ideal. Hmm. Um. Actually, something I could do, since we only have 30 minutes left, is I could go full React channel and react to my own video. As in just kind of go over the video itself and some stuff I wanted to say about it. How does that sound to y'all? Lol, sure. Okay, let me turn up my audio for myself and then for you guys as well. Tell me if this is too loud. But part of the reason I got into linguistics in the first place was because when I was a wee weeb reading manga scanlations online, I grew interested in the characters in the background. That is an actual photo of me from, obviously I look very similar, from high school, believe it or not. I had I think it was my senior year. Yeah, my senior year of high school. It was my first year of actually being able to go to school because I had, for the past 3 years, missed 75% of school days due to migraines and sickness. And I think on this day, I was on my mom's college campus where she taught. Thank you, kitten. I was on my mom's. Yeah, I was on the college campus where my mom taught, and I was going to sit in her office as I did online schooling so I could actually graduate from high school. And I still have all my fedoras. I have a bunch of them. And I stand by that fedoras are good looking hats. You just actually need to use them correctly. And I used them before those fucking incels got a hold of them. Let me make it clear. I used them before the incels got a hold of them. Ugh, bastards. Because there are so many different letters in use. From this, I started studying Japanese and learned that Japanese. I'm quite happy with Mac, thank you very much. This was composed of 3 distinct but deeply related scripts. 2 of these scripts are syllabaries called kana, meaning borrowed character. That is fair. Remember that for later, it's important. Both of the scripts, as a category of syllabary implies, represent syllables, though in Japanese they actually represent a unit called a mora. But the name morary doesn't exist, so syllabary works just well enough. Yeah, what I find funny about that little comment, morary doesn't exist, is it is a shame that it doesn't. Because unless you're the yi syllabary, most syllabaries I know of actually represent mora. Like the syllabary used in Mayan hieroglyphs, Sumerian syllabaries, the Akkadian syllabary, the Inuktitut syllabary, they all use mora, not syllables. Mora. That, yes, I would like more berry on my creamy, please. Thank you very much. Ooh, a creamy with berries actually sounds really good. Now I want a creamy with berries. God damn, now I'm hungry. Either way, the more rounded, loopy one is known as hiragana, meaning smooth kana, while the angular set is known as katakana, meaning partial kana. Again, remember these name translations, as they are important for later. Yeah, but it's still the... Like, if we go to the Akkadian... I hate calling it the elf... Yeah, okay, it's under cuneiform. If we go to... Where is this table? Here. So we have syllables that open, like these ones. So ka, ke, ki, ku, and so on and so forth. But we also have syllables that show a closing, closed syllables, which almost always represents an extra, in most languages, represents an extra more or extra weight on the end. So yeah, it doesn't really represent mora, but it doesn't represent syllables either. It represents parts of the syllables. Finally, the last scripts in use are kanji, meaning Chinese character. These don't represent sounds generally, but instead represent semantic meaning. I won't go too deep into the structure of kanji in this video, as I've done that previously, but the basic gist is that, for example, this character would represent person, this character would represent anti, and this character would represent the nasal twang in speech caused by having one's nose clogged. So actually, I gotta ask you, Kat. Have you ever seen that character in use? Okay, that last one isn't really used in Japanese, though it does see some marginal use in Chinese apparently, as it's part of the PRC's list of commonly used standard Chinese characters. Yeah. Have you actually seen that character in use, Nang? Because I found it. Why did I just hear a phone ringing? It it's pronounced Nang. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. Oh wait, no, I don't want to send an email. No, stop. Don't save. No, why did? Okay. Yeah, it's Nang, which apparently, yeah, it's on the PRC's list of used characters, which I don't feel like it's a very commonly used character, but it's on there somehow. And I actually found it because I was trying to figure out the characters in use with the most number of strokes in order for my stroke order project I'm doing. And I found that. And I've just found it hilarious ever since because it is such a specific meaning. But anyway, moving on. So Japanese has three scripts, and instead of, say, Uzbek, where the three different scripts are generally used independently of one another, that was a nightmare to. That looked very simple, but that was a nightmare to format, believe it or not, actually. The uh, Latin and Cyrillic scripts formatted just fine, but the Arabic script, for some reason, would not have would not go right to left. So like if there was a period here after the sentence, it would be thrown all the way over here instead for some reason. And I could not get it to work. And then trying to find a font on my system that showed all the Uzbek characters because most of them didn't. And eventually I just downloaded Adobe Noto Arabic Sans in order to showcase these special characters here. It took me a solid hour before I finally settled on this layout because I just did not care anymore to go forwards. Yes, I have heard about that for the word for fart. It is quite amusing. It's also one of the one of the whatchamacallits. One of the words in English that directly comes from Proto-Indo-European. Like the only thing that's changed about it is the sound changes and not the meaning or the forms added on. Is dregs, as in the dregs at the bottom of a bottle or a barrel. Shut up, cat. And it apparently meant that in, let's see. Yeah, all the way back in Proto-Indo-European, it's had the meaning of sediment or the stuff at the bottom of wine, oil, and fat, dregs. Which, you know what that means to me? Our ancestors were alcoholics. So the fact that they had a mead also probably implies the same. That I did not know. That's a fun fact. That Serbian preserves the meaning.
Japanese opts to use all three at the same time. Kanji is generally used for large semantically heavy native and Sino-Japanese words, while hiragana is used for native words without kanji, as well as alongside certain kanji to disambiguate their reading or to inflect words. Finally, katakana is used to represent foreign loanwords, as a type of italics to draw attention, or in scientific writing for animal and plant species. Though those last two examples aren't really shown here as they aren't the easiest to weave into a simple example sentence.
Yeah, here I feel like I could have actually spent a bit more time making a better example. Making a better example sentence to showcase all the things. And I also messed up a little bit because I color coded the inflections differently from the particles. But I forgot to, in my recording, say, oh, particles and inflections. And so I just kind of had to throw them up at the same time in colorizing them. I also feel like I could have added the italics and italic usage of whatchamacallit, of katakana. But yeah, this I was quite proud of the way it just kind of pops up when I say the examples and highlights them, but I feel like I could have done a little bit more here.
But isn't that interesting? Three scripts, with one being a logographic representation and the other two being phonetic representations of the language. Well, almost phonetic. The characters ha and he change pronunciation to wa and e when used as particles, and wo is almost always pronounced as o outside of careful speech. But be that as it may,
Which only applies, I'm pretty sure, to the particle itself. Because words that used to have wo that became o no longer are ever pronounced as war, I'm pretty sure. So like onna, I think once pronounced as wona. That's my Greek keyboard. Or was it pronounced as wona? Let me check. Yeah, womina. I don't think this is ever pronounced as wonna, which means it's only in a learned pronunciation. This character is only pronounced as wo as a learned pronunciation of the particle. Yeah. I mean, fair. I was also thinking about the three different shades of green, but I wanted to group them using similar ish shades or categories of. Notice how the kanji are in red and orange, that kind of warmer color tone. If I had examples of the italic or the scientific meaning, I definitely would have had them in a different shade of blue for katakana. But yeah, maybe having such similar shades wasn't a great idea.
the question still stands. Why is Japanese spelled in this mixed script style? Japan probably first encountered writing during the late Yayoi period of Japan, as diplomatic relations between Japan and China started. The earliest evidence of writing in Japan we have is of the Kanno wa no nan no kokuoin.
5 fucking takes. That took me 5 takes to record. Oh, shush, cat. I also wanted. If I remade this video, I might have added a little image of uh, a map of China and Japan with like a little arrow pointing, signifying that they are. I am getting a second call. Signifying that they are. Signifying their relation. I'm gonna Be right back.
or the king of
Okay, let's see what exactly I said.
Mei, the Japan. Japan probably first encountered writing during the late Yayoi period of Japan. It's
What do you mean by not to be confused with the late Yayoi period of Japan? Because I literally say late Yayoi period of Japan. Okay, where's my mouse? There we go.
Japan probably first encountered writing during the late Yayoi period of Japan, as diplomatic relations between Japan and China started. The earliest evidence of writing in Japan we have is of the Kanno wa no Nano Kokuoin, or
Kano wa no Nano Kokuoin. There we go.
the King of Na's gold seal, from the middle of the 1st century AD. This seal was gifted to a Na kingdom emissary by Emperor Guangwu of the Eastern Han Empire.
I probably should have had an image of Emperor Guangwu or like one of his artworks.
The 5 letters of the golden seal spell out Kanno wa no Nano Kokuo in Chinese seal script. However, despite this and other examples,
I don't know why, but that just sounds weird to me the way that is said. Why does that sound weird? It sounded fine when I was recording and editing the video, but...
AD. This seal was gifted to a Na kingdom emissary by Emperor Guangwu of the Eastern Han Empire. The 5 letters of the golden seal spell out Kanno wa no Nano Kokuo in Chinese seal script.
I was meant to be in English. I was not... That was meant to be an English translation of the... It was meant to be the Hanzhua nation... the king... It was meant to say the king of the non-nation of Wa, emissary of Han. Because that was the... It does sound like too many syllables, but that is the number of syllables. It's the fact that it was meant to be an English translation. So the King of Nazgold seal isn't an actual translation of the letters on the thing. Because if...
of Na's gold seal, diplomatic relations between Japan and China started. The earliest evidence of writing in Japan we have is of the Kanno wa no Nano Kokuoin, or the King of Na's gold seal.
So King of Nazgold seal there is the name of it in English, but not a translation of the name. And not a translation of the thing on it.
From the middle of the 1st century AD. This seal was gifted to a Na kingdom emissary by Emperor Guangwu of the Eastern Han Empire. The 5 letters of the golden seal spell out Kanno wa no Nano Kokuo in Chinese seal script.
Yeah, that part was meant to be Na, the king of Na of Wa, or Japan, of Khan, kind of. It was... that's... I'm also missing...
However, despite this and other examples of Chinese writing in Japan, such as various coins and mirrors, the Japanese themselves didn't adopt writing, instead seeing it as a more decorative aspect.
I should have added examples of the coins and mirrors, but yeah, I also had a comment there about how original the naming of the thing is, with seal script used on seals. But that's why that sounded wrong. It's always after the fact when you realize all the little mistakes you make.
It wasn't until the 5th century that the Japanese began to adopt writing in the form of classical Chinese from the Baekje kingdom on the Korean peninsula. Yep.
Apparently, that poem and other poems of classical Chinese, but this one in particular are nightmares in translation, apparently. Because of the way classical Chinese poetry worked, it is so open to interpretation that you could translate it a million different ways. And I've seen like 1,000 different ways of translating this one poem by Li Bai. Anyway.
When the Japanese learned to write, they learned to write classical Chinese from Korean scholars to record Japanese history and government. To give you a better idea of what this was like, the Nihon Shoki.
Going back to the learning from Korean, putting a pin in that is actually an important point to bring up on the katakana section.
History and government. To give you a better idea of what this was like, the Nihon Shoki, the second earliest known piece of literature written by a Japanese author and possibly one of the most foundational pieces of Japanese literature, as it discusses the history of Japan until the Nara period and sets the entire foundation that is a Japanese imperial family's claim to the throne in mythological origin. That Nihon Shoki was written entirely in classical Chinese.
I was originally planning on having a picture here of the Japanese imperial family, but I spent so long trying to find one that I liked that while looking, I just figured that even if I was a famous person, I wouldn't really be big on having my photos, especially of my family, just kind of shown around. Like, I know it's part of the expectation as the royal family, but it still felt iffy to me. So eventually I just settled on their seal script, their imperial seal.
Its predecessor, the Kojiki, a more reduced form of the stories, was also written in classical Chinese, though this form was modified in slight ways to represent the Japanese language to a lesser extent. For example, this verse from the Kojiki, where the character mi is used to represent the Japanese polite prefix mi. This writing in classical Chinese.
I said me twice there. I think what I meant to say was, let me. I think I meant to say something else there, or just say it slightly differently. But was it? Okay. Yeah, it wasn't taken for its pronunciation of me, but it was taken for its meaning of the royal that slightly changed to the polite prefix. But I just said me twice instead of actually explaining what the character was and why it was being used in said way.
Is called Kambun, was the main way to write within Japanese mi.
Yeah, but basically what this is a classical Chinese sentence. Oof. This is a classical Chinese sentence. I'm pretty sure. Kat, can you back me up on this?
This writing.
This is a classical Chinese sentence written in Japan in the Kojiki. And this character here is not used in this way. It is, however, its meaning of being a prefix for royal and imperial people was extended to the Japanese meaning of the polite prefix that is still kind of around in words like osake or goshujin, where it's now pronounced as o or go. Which, whatever happened to the Uh, Old Japanese, me. Whatever happened to this prefix? Hmm. Ong. Was, uh, huh. Either way, using it like that is a very Japanese thing to do. There are other examples that are much more obviously Japanese, but I just couldn't figure out a way to showcase it in a way that made sense, and this was the next best thing.
Classical Chinese called Kanbun was the main way to write within Japanese court and in religious contexts, which makes sense as Kanbun came to Japan alongside Buddhism and Confucianism, and many Buddhist texts in East Asia were written in classical Chinese, if not Sanskrit.
Yeah, so Kanbun is literally just classical Chinese. Like it's like when Latin was the lingua franca of Europe, classical Chinese was the lingua franca of the region. And it was used, as I said before, in Confucius texts because Confucianism is a Chinese homegrown religion, used in Taoist texts, and in many places of that got Buddhism from China. They they translated a lot of the works into Chinese, and that is what spread around. There still was a lot of people using Sanskrit, especially the Nagari described Siddham script seen here, or Boji, I think Bonji in Japan, which is still used in monasteries in Japan apparently, and you'll see it every now and then on in pop culture and whatnot. It's a fascinating script with a fascinating history. It's also how the Japanese alphabet order came about. The Gojuon, or the why is it in Chinese? Uh, yeah. So this order of A Ka Sa Ta Nam Hamaya Rawa was based off of the order of the consonants in the Brahmic scripts. So ka, sa, ta, na, ha, pa, ma, ya, so on and so forth. It's a fun little fact there.
Despite this prevalence of classical Chinese, people still really wanted to write their own language down. Out of this desire came kana, or the usage of Chinese characters for the sound value instead of the semantic meaning. Now the translation of borrowed character makes a bit more sense, doesn't it?
What I find funny about this is it's not actually, it wasn't originally kana, it was karina. And the reason why it's in kunyomi, or Japanese reading, is because it was originally kari na, a native Japanese word with a native Japanese word that eventually just shortened down into kanna and eventually kana.
With kana, one would generally write out Japanese phonetically, using the pronunciation of certain characters, regardless of their inherent meaning. There was some consistency in the characters used, as can be seen with this poem from the Kojiki, where this character was consistently used for ya, and this character was consistently used for the sound tu.
I realized during my the premiere yesterday that I didn't have an all black version that then switched to red to highlight ya and switched to orange to highlight tu, which it seems like it worked fine this way. But it is kind of disappointing, as I said, did all that work to position it just right so that way it wouldn't look like it moved in the transition from a all black to highlighted form.
So on. But any character could be used as long as it sounded similar enough to the Japanese syllable, as can be seen from this poem from the Manyoshu. Though this poem also exhibits another feature of kana, which is to retain certain characters for their meaning, just read with their Japanese equivalents. Sometimes you'd have a word written twice, once with a semantic character and once with a phonetic spelling, such as moti here.
Yeah, so this character, I brought this up talking about the simplification, but the original texts here, which I found in the History of the Japanese Language by Bjark Felix. Yeah. God, I cannot remember his name. Bjark Frellisvig. Frellisvig used the Shinji-tai form. And then when looking up examples of it online, I found both being used. And eventually I just figured why I'll just use the QG type form just for the aesthetic of it all. Then this I found interesting as I actually spent 2 hours trying to find an example of this throughout many different books and things. I spent 2 hours trying to find it in a sentence with just for this example until I realized that this example sentence I had pulled earlier for this had the examples. I think I did this part on stream, but before that, I was spending so long on trying to find it. Just funny little coincidence.
Nowadays, a style of kana with full characters is called Manyōgana, after the Manyoshu, the oldest collection of written Japanese poetry written almost entirely in Manyōgana. These two styles of writing were the main ways of writing Old Japanese. However,
I should have also probably mentioned that Manyōgana was used in the Kojiki, and it was used for the poetry and songs, native Japanese songs used. So the storytelling element and the narration and all that was done in classical Chinese Kambun, but the songs and poems and the way people spoke was done, from my understanding, in Manyōgana, in old Japanese.
as the Nara period moved on to the Heian period around the 8th century, and the language of Old Japanese changed into that of early Middle Japanese, so too did the writing evolve. Kambun and Manyōgana were still used, but new ways to write based on them had slowly started to develop. Perhaps the most well-known of these methods outside of Japan is that of Manyōgana becoming more cursive over time until it was recognized as a different script.
I really should have had the intermediary hentaigana between those two now that I'm looking at it. Because you can see the similarities between the kanji and the hiragana used, but I feel like it would have been a better example to have the hentaigana in between.
This script went by a couple of names, with Soulgana, cursive script, being popular due to
Spelling
its
mistake.
cursive-connected nature, and Onnade being popular as the script was generally used by women of the court in poetry. Today the script is known as hiragana, or at least an extremely early form of it. Like Manyōgana before it, this script was mainly phonetic, with characters representing syllabic units instead of semantic ones.
Moraic, representing Moraic units, not syllabic. Whoops.
And as mentioned previously, this script was mainly used in poetry, but it was also used in personal diaries and communications. Perhaps one of the most well-known poets to use this early form of hiragana was Murasaki Shikibu, or Lady Murasaki, who authored the Tale of Genji. The example on screen sadly isn't the Tale of Genji, but actually from a diary, but it still shows just how insane this cursive script actually was. It also shows that kanji was still in use in this style of writing to an extent, but the majority of the script was kana in nature.
I cannot imagine having to learn and read this. Because looking at cursive script for Chinese is understandable enough as to how the cursive was derived. And it's hard, but there's some consistency. But in this, I don't. Part of it is I don't recognize many of the hentai gana. But it is not vertical Arabic. It is. I recognize many of the kana. But then in cases there's like just these long things which I'm assuming are singular kana. Or two kana thrown together. But yeah. Thanks for your help again finding this image, cat. I was going mad. Isn't a syllable effectively a kind of mora? No. 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 No, 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 no. A mora is a kind of... No. A mora is a part of a syllable, but a syllable isn't a mora. No, 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 no. The long things might be... I need to... Next time I'm walking through Chinatown in Boston, I need to show you a poem on the side of a Japanese steakhouse.
Also, unlike the name of woman script, a
That
fair
is
number of
fair.
men also use a script in their personal life. Though outside of that, they were generally expected to use Manyogana or Kambun. Speaking of Kambun, some interesting developments also occurred there. See, the court officials and Buddhist monks would read and write in Kambun, but when reading the text aloud or when speaking, they would use Japanese. This practice of reading and writing one thing, but saying another was quite laborious, especially when the two languages were as distinct as classical Chinese, with its analytic grammar and monosyllabic words, and Middle Japanese, with its highly agglutinative grammar and multisyllabic words.
I definitely could have showcased the monosyllabic and analytic style of classical Chinese versus the freer, more agglutinative nature of Japanese much better. I think I didn't because I was rushing to meet a deadline. But I really should have. Especially for those who might not know as much about Japanese as my average viewer base.
To ease this task, Buddhist monks and government officials began to annotate the text. Said annotations can be seen here from a Heian period sutra. They may be kind of hard to see here, but the little black marks are annotations. But how exactly did these annotations work? Well, there are several levels of annotations that could be used. The first and most common was the kairiten, or the returning marks. These were little marks used to help the reader mentally rearrange the order of the words. The simplest form of this is the reiten, or remark, which indicates that two characters are swapped from Chinese to Japanese. Then there are the ichiniten, or 1-2 marks. These designate 1 as a starting point, and then going in growing order from 1 to 3, they drag the other words after that 1. If even that isn't enough,
Nope.
then there are 3 more layers that one can use with similar functionality to Ichiniten. The Jōgeiten, with up, down, and middle. The Go-Tsuten, which uses the characters of the 10 heavenly stems, a kind of ordinal system used in much of the Sinosphere. And finally, the Tenjiten, which uses the concept of heaven, earth, and the human used in Eastern philosophy. According to a Kambun textbook I found, rarely are all 4 sets ever used. But this text from a 9th century letter is a common example of all of them in use at once. The other type of annotation used, often in conjunction with the kairi teng.
Okay, before we move on from the kairi teng, I jumped through, looking back on this, especially during the premiere, I realized I kind of jumped through the examples quicker than I would have liked. as you barely get a chance to even see the Jogeiteng before we move on to the Kotsuteng, which we see for a second longer, but then we just jump up to the Tenchiteng. Which I also realized I should have mentioned that I left these marks here just in order to show how the rearrangement was happening, because there were too many colors needing to be used to represent all of this. But yeah, I also forgot to mention that this list here isn't an order of, okay, we've done 1, 2, 3, so we need another one, so let's use Joge, then let's use Kotsuteng. These were all used independently of one another. As in, you could have a text that only had the Tenshiteng or the Jogeteng. Kotsuteng was generally used when these three were already used, or when the rearrangement called for more parts to be rearranged than 3. Because these kind of have a limit of 3 words moving. Actually 2 if you consider the fact that the very first one is stationary and the rest of them move to after that first upper level one. And so they were used independently, and they were also used together, and Kotsutang was used if there were more than 3 things being moved at once. And then, yeah, you mentioned the hyphen mark. Do you mean the hyphen mark that is used to show that 2 characters are classified as a unit? Because I'm trying to think of other hyphen marks, but I think the only hyphen mark I can think of is the one that signifies that 2 characters are a unit. Yeah, okay. So yeah, what Kat's saying there is that oftentimes there'll be a mark that I can just show you using my Kanbun textbook I found. Which, while making my examples, I was looking at the examples in the textbook closer, and I realized they had a lot of mistakes. Not a lot, but more than I was expecting. Which I just find kind of amusing. Okay, let's see where. Here we go. No, that's not. Where? Okay, I can use it. I can show it using this. Okay, so here is the general classical Chinese, and then here's one with the hyphen mark. This hyphen mark showcases that these 2 characters are a unit, and they move as one in the translation. Aidoksu. If that makes sense. Because the Kairitang wasn't put at the end of the units, but in the middle of the units that would move. Which I kind of left out during the video, as I already had a lot of content that I needed to talk about. And it was already hectic enough that I figured that it would be something people would see if they wanted to study classical Chinese even more, just themselves.
Which uses the concept of heaven, earth, and the human used in Eastern philosophy.
Fun fact, this concept here, heaven, earth, and human, is the same concept behind the character creation of vowels in Hangul. Nope, that's not. So if we go to the Hangul letters, vowels, that's not it. There was a nice table. Oh, here we go. So yeah, yin yang and person, but it's also the ground, the sun or the heavens, and the person. Ground often is represented by yin, sun, and heavens by yang, so on and so forth. I don't know much more than that, so but it is an interesting fact that it's this concept of heaven, earth, and the person is so prevalent throughout linguistic descriptions of languages and in the alphabet, in the writing systems.
According to a Kanbun textbook I found, rarely are all four sets ever used. But this text from a 9th century letter is a common example of all of them in use at once. The other type of annotation used, often in conjunction with the kairi teng, are the reading inflectional marks. These were originally kanji with pronunciations that were familiar to the author, that were used to mark the pronunciation of a character or the inflection of a word in the main text. Over time, only part of the kana was used, and this gave rise to katakana. This can be seen in this Heian period sutra from earlier, and here's an example with full marking in practice. Remember, this part is
I don't know why there's a black
earlier,
screen there.
and here's an example with full marking.
I just realized there's a spacing issue here. This should have been much closer. But yeah, this is that same letter from earlier with a actual Japanese translation in classical Japanese and the kanbun marking. Something interesting that would happen with the reitang is I tried emulating it here, but I failed. Is that the reitang would actually be a part of some of the characters being used. So like this little vertical stroke here would have been turned into a reitang in many cases. But there was something else. Yes. Earlier I mentioned that it's important in the history of katakana that they come from, that Chinese characters comes from Korea. Korea had its own method of marking characters that was very similar to the way katakana does. The Japanese did it with katakana. And there's a theory by certain linguists and Japanologists, people studying Japanese and Korean, that katakana as a writing system actually derives from Korean, the Korean system. Kugyol, I think it is, which I think at this point has mostly been disproven, and they just both used a similar system of marking Chinese characters' pronunciations using characters they already knew, and they both derived from there. I'm almost done. But yeah, that is. So if you see something about katakana coming from Korea, this is why, but it's not. It hasn't actually been proven, and I think has for the most part been disproven. It would be somewhat similar to saying that the Latin script came from Eastern Greek, the Eastern Greek alphabet, which, no, they both came from a similar source, but the Latin script ultimately came from the Western Greek alphabet and so on.
In practice. Remember, this part is all that's written. This is just how people would read it aloud.
Goes black.
Either way, these kana in conjunction with the kairi teng were very useful in marking classical Chinese. The katakana specifically was so useful in fact that it actually gave rise to a semi-new way of writing Japanese itself, instead of just annotating kanbun, which can be found in the form of setsuwa poetry. In this text from the Kamakura period, we can see this with the majority katakana system being used to show pronunciation of certain words, and to show the inflectional endings of others. What's most important, though, is that it's representing Japanese in a similar way to hiragana writing, just with a wee bit more kanji.
So an important thing to mention with setsuwa poetry is this is around the time that the writing of Japanese and writing of Chinese starts to blur to an extent. Because with hiragana and manyogana, there were very few loanwords from. There are very few Sino-Japanese loanwords in the way that we think of them today. But with Setsuwa poetry, because it's being done by Buddhists for Buddhist texts, using Buddhist ideas, which often come from China, we start to see a huge influx around this period of these words being read using onyomi, using Chinese pronunciation as loan words. And so not only do you have a lot more kanji being used, you have a lot more non-native Japanese words being added and used within the language.
Now, at this point, you might be thinking,
Was that me drinking something?
just with a wee bit more kanji. Now,
Did I not edit out me taking a sip of water? Whoops.
at this point, you might be thinking, okay, so Manyogana was created, and that quickly became the basis for modern Japanese orthography, and katakana, which was used in bureaucracy and religion, was relegated to technical and eventually loan words, and kanbun and manyogana were quickly abandoned, right?
This is the general sentiment I see in Western discussions of the history of Japanese script. And I don't mean like the text books and whatnot that have actually done their research, but I mean like people in comment sections and on Reddit or Quora and whatnot discussing the history of Japanese that goes from classical Chinese, and then there's Manyogana, and then Kana derives from Manyogana, and we get modern Japanese, which, as I go on to describe, is not how that happens.
Loan words, and kanbun and manyogana were quickly abandoned, right? Nope! Because from the end of the Heian period all the way to the Meiji Restoration, all four systems were in use. Kanbun remained in literary and official use as well as in international relations with China and Korea. Kanji and katakana mixed script was used in governmental cases, literature, science, and so on. Kanji hiragana mixed script was used in personal correspondence, poetry, and literature, and manyogana also saw limited use throughout the period.
Something else I should mention is Kat actually sent me an example of one of these, the Shuo Kanbun, which is that there were other methods of writing aside from these four. There were varying levels of either Japanese or Chinese or both. And so one of them was technically kanbun, but kanbun in such a way that Japanese inflection was shown. I can't remember what the name of it was, but there were more methods of writing writing in Japan for classical Chinese, Japanese, mixture of both and whatnot, than just these four methods. It's just that these four methods were the main ways of doing so. Sorobun. Yeah, Sorobun. That's what it is, I'm pretty sure.
So for almost a millennium, Japan had four different but concurrent ways to write, with each seeing varying amounts of popularity as time went on. One method was for a different language, while the other three were methods of writing the same language. What's worse still is that by the Edo period, the spoken language had once again changed, but this time, the written language of the Heian period, when these methods of writing were devised, hadn't. This variety became known as Classical Japanese, and at this point would be like if English speakers today had to learn to read and write in the style of the Canterbury Tales. Sure, it's doable, but it's a pain in the butt to learn, and people in the Meiji period definitely thought so as well.
So I think a better example would be the when Czech was being revitalized during the movement with difference, because it's not just a difference in spelling, but it's a difference in pronunciation, but a difference in grammar that happens. So this would be the Japanese situation would be like if we spoke as we do today, but we had to write using the same words and same methods of speaking that they used during the Canterbury Tales. It's like those weird little grammatical principles they had back then.
So starting in the late 1800s, certain authors began to write in a modern style of Japanese using kanji hiragana mixed script in a movement called Genbunichi. The movement's goal, as the name implied, was to bring speech and writing into one standardized form. This movement gained enough steam that the Meiji government would not only standardize the list of kana.
I should also mention that it's around this time, due to westernization, that horizontal writing of Japanese alongside Chinese started going left to right instead of right to left. Because it used to be that because they were written, that would mad bean, because they were written vertically from right to left, when they were written horizontally, it was basically seen as single character columns all along the way. And so in many historical stuff, you'll see right to left written Japanese or Chinese, specifically Chinese mostly, as I think Japanese tended to stick with the verticality. But it's around this period that you start to see, and you can see it in this novelization, that we see a shift of left to right, uki gumo.
Movement's goal, as the name implied, was to bring speech and writing into one standardized form. This movement gained enough steam that the Meiji government would not only standardize the list of kana used in writing, but by the 1920s promoted their modern variety to the point that almost all printed materials were in modern Japanese, using kanji hiragana mixed script. Government documents, however, would remain in classical Japanese with kanji katakana mixed script, though modern Japanese would be used at times in the military and in lower-end bureaucracy, but still with katakana. However,
I forgot to get examples of the katakana. I'm gonna be honest, I was editing the video and I realized, shit, I don't have any katakana examples. And I just looked at the time I had left and I was like, they'll understand. They can hear what I'm saying.
kanji katakana mixed script, though modern Japanese would be used at times in the military and in lower-end bureaucracy, but still with katakana. However, due to a certain conservative mindset, quite a bit of etymological spelling of kana remained. So the word kyo would be written as kefu in kana, and the declarative ending masho was written as maseyu. That last example can actually be seen in this piece of Japanese propaganda against the perm hairstyle. Now this is finally starting to look quite similar to the system that Japanese is currently written in. However, katakana and hiragana are still mostly used separately. So how is it that katakana lost the ability to represent the grammatical parts of the language, and was relegated to loanwords and scientific terms? The answer to that can be seen in 1945 when Japan lost World War II and once again decided to reform their writing system. In this reform, a list of official kanji for document use was created as well as simplified in a process known as shinjitai, which, if you've caught one of my Sunday office hours streams, you know my feelings on. And hiragana was updated to lose its historical orthography and better represent pronunciation, and also spread into usage in government documents. And katakana? Katakana was foregone by the government.
Okay, before we continue, this actually here is something I find funny. How Japanese used to have a wa digraph, not wa digraph, a wa glide, similar to how it has ya. So like you can have ko and kyo. You used to be able to have ka and kwa, ke and kwe. And what's something I find really funny about this, I'll bring it up in another video, is the word keru, to kick, in Japanese is one of the few words that has the kwe sound in it. It was a very rare sound in Middle Japanese. But something else I find funny about it is the word kweru was for the longest time the only word in its conjugation class. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there were there were a handful of conjugation classes, and all depending on how the stem looked. So some of them change. I can show an example chart of it. So here we can see that there's quadrigrade, where the stem takes 4 different vowels. Then upper monograde, which only has 1 form of the stem. Upper bigrade and lower bigrade, which have 2 forms. E and U, or E and U. And then lower monograde, which the only word in this category was queru. For some reason, it became the only word in its category and stayed that way for like 300-400 years before eventually merging with the common verbs.
And
Just a weird little fact that I'll bring up again in my video on classical Japanese verbs, but it is so weird that such a specific, that a word like kick, which if you think about it, isn't all that common. It's not an uncommon verb, but how often do you say kick? And the fact that it is the only verb of its class with its own special conjugation is hilarious to me.
better represent pronunciation, and also spread into usage in
Yes, I knew there are several standards for historical kana spelling. I did not bring them up, but there were a few competing during the Genbun Ichi and before the Genbun Ichi. I think there were like 3 main schools of thought on how to spell kana. Some more etymological, some more phonetic, but the etymological won originally until World War II.
Geography and better represent pronunciation, and also spread into usage in government documents. And katakana? Katakana was far gone by the government due to its association with the military and wartime government of World War II. However, as we know, it didn't disappear. That is because back when trade with the West was going on in the Edo period, and new concepts such as glass tobacco and coffee were coming into the country starting in the 19th and 20th centuries, the Japanese had one of 3 methods to naming them. The first was to calque them, the second was to coin a new term, and the third was to borrow the word but to give it a kanji spelling. In the latter case, because these would be in scientific or official documents, katakana would be used to gloss them for their reading. Katakana was also used in dictionaries at the time as phonetic guides on how to pronounce certain words, a tradition that may have derived from katakana's original purpose of transcribing Buddhist and Chinese texts.
Yes, Norway needs to lose a world war to figure out its spelling. Yeah, so something that I didn't mention here because she did not want me really going over 15 minutes for this video, was that these are the 2 main reasons why I found that today we have katakana for phonetic guides and as foreign loan words and scientific terms, but it's also that there were people before this. So there were I think I found 2 people before this, during the Edo period, or maybe even before the Edo period, that consistently themselves used katakana as a form of italics and as a form of loan words. So while the modern convention seems to be based on this practice of kanji plus katakana spelling and phonetic spelling in dictionaries, there were examples beforehand and a basis beforehand of it being used for specifically loan words.
This example is a wee bit pixelated, but the main entries are in hiragana, and when the pronunciation is different than the spelling, small katakana is put to the side. Both of these methods, from what I have gathered, seem to have given rise to the modern usage of using katakana for loan words and scientific terms. And there is an overly simplified history of the Japanese writing.
I think that's where I will end that, because the rest is just the merging of Yes, that is why English still has our archaic ass spelling. Something I wanted to point out was the entries were in hiragana, partly because hiragana was seen as the Japanese script. Katakana was representative of Japanese, but it was cold and not as culturally connected to the language as hiragana was. And so you can see that hiragana is used in the dictionary heading as a kind of a bold thing, but then the katakana is used in the body of the text because it's an academic source. Just something I wanted to point out, but I think we are 40 minutes. I originally meant this just to be like a short, quick little, hey, let's go over the video I just released and talk about some stuff, but we are 40 minutes over the end of the thing, so I'm going to end this here. No streams on the second channel this week as I still don't have a microphone at home, and I'm in Boston at the moment, so I can't really play games. But I'll be back on Sunday for my next office hours stream, and until then, I bid you all adieu.
Pixelated, but the main entries.
Okay, end stream, there we go.